Good evening. I'd like to invite you to the meeting of the Curriculum and Policy Committee of Portland Public Schools. It is March 25th at 5:04, and we're meeting in Zoom mode. I'm Julianne Opperman, and I see committee member and Vice Chair Bondo, and board chair Lentz, and I believe, and Mr. Ali, who's now coming on, who's also on the committee.
Yes, I'm
here. Good to see you. Dr. Warren, who is a staff liaison to the committee. Dr. Ahmed is here as well, and Dr. Scallon is joining us for a bit, I understand. So, we have a busy night, but I want to make one more introduction. The person you never see at these meetings, and that is Mr. Greg Lucier.
Oh.
He is there and running the show and making sure we get things on and off to a good start. And silence me when it's too much. Anyway, we have public comment time. We don't have to do that, but it is available. And if you would like to speak, it would be useful if you would raise your hand. And if we have anyone who wishes to speak, I will read the expectations. I see several people, but I don't see anyone. Oh, there it is, Mr. Burke. All right, well, Mr. Burke, I will be with you in a moment, but first I'm reading the public comment requirements. So as a reminder, the public comment, members of the public may speak on any subject directly related to the operations of the schools, except for personnel matters or complaints concerning specific employees or students, which shall be addressed through established policies and procedures. Comments are limited to a maximum of 3 minutes or 6 minutes for individuals using an interpreter to make their comment. Individuals may not relinquish a portion of their allotted time to another speaker, and the board may not respond to comments. Speakers must refrain from engaging in disruptive conduct, including, but not limited to, vulgar and or obscene language, threatening others using words or by other actions, using pejorative or discriminatory language with reference to a person or group on the basis of their religion, ethnicity, nationality, race, color, descent, gender, or other identifying factors. You're making defamatory comments exceeding the allotted time limits and talking over, or which would not happen here, others offering repetitive comments and offering comments on matters unrelated to the school district, programs, policies, or operations. I will stop any public comment that does not adhere to these rules. And so, Mr. Burke, would you please identify yourself with your address, and I will start timing you.
Sure. I'm David Burke, and I live here in Portland at 29 Glen Garden Street, and I work for Portland Public Schools. Is that all you need for?
That's good.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I'd like my 15 seconds of IDing myself back. That's actually a joke. I'm fine.
Now I have 30 seconds. All right.
Yeah, no, I want to speak on, I saw on the agenda tonight is developing cell phone policies for, or refining them for the middle school and the high school, which I assume then you guys develop policies that go to the larger board for more comment and more voting and all the such.
Sure.
I read the draft, and it's, I work with the Phone Free Schools Portland, and the draft is an unchanged, basically unchanged, essentially unchanged policy from what exists now, and what's really quite devastating to the schools, to the school day, to the students, to the teachers, to learning. So I strongly urge you not to adopt any policy that's going to do that. We've got tons of research and tons of parent support that the kids, the students need a phone-free school day. They're averaging somewhere between 7 and 9 hours a day average for across the country on their phones, and they need that time, to be with each other, to learn and grow and not scroll. Also, these kids are being, monetized every time they touch a phone, and that has no place in any school for us to be selling their data and participating in the manipulation of them by corporations and such who don't have their interests at heart. It's ethically completely wrong for any school to be engaging in that. And right now we are completely engaging in this new policy as it's written now, completely endorses that, allows it, and advocates for it during lunchtime and in the halls and such. We have that policy now. The policy is written in the lunch in the halls, and the kids just overwhelm the teachers in the classrooms. The phones are out. The phones will be out with this new, if the policy as it written stands or remains unchanged. We need phone-free schools. Other schools are doing it. They're doing it on the cheap, and they're doing it successfully, and they're happy with it. And we can have it too. We don't need to jump through big hoops to get that. I know there's a big process, and I know there's a lot of practical limitations that need to be addressed, but that problem solving can happen. And we have really talented people who will really throw their weight and their strength of their problem solving capacity to that cause. I know I would, and I know every other teacher that I've ever met would too. I strongly endorse you to keep working towards a phone-free school and finding that solution for our schools. It is going to raise our test scores and make our kids happier more than anything else you guys could do this year. Phone-free schools for Portland is the way, the next way, the obvious way. Thank you.
Perfect. 3 minutes. Thank you, Mr. Burke. And I think when we have discussion, you'll hear more about that. Mr. Hosmer, would you like to speak?
Oh, thank you. Hi, my name is Matthew Hosmer. I live at 419 Cumberland Avenue in Portland. I'm also a teacher in Portland Public Schools. To echo what Mr. Burke was just saying, I think that here we are looking for changes to policy that is going to create an environment where personal electronic devices are not interfering with the instructional day. And so that they are also a policy that is in support of student mental health, building community, all the things that we here at Portland Public Schools say that we want to do. But I do believe that the current wording of the policy and the proposed draft of the policy is not a big step towards that end goal of creating an environment where the outside influence of technology, social media, monetization of our students' time is being dealt with in a way that is going to be promoting the health, social, and mental well-being of our student population. That is why, as we go through this process, considering the moves that we need to make, both in the middle school and at the high school level, I would strongly advocate for a much stronger policy that takes the burden of the enforcement off of teachers and administrators to a point where it is understood from kindergarten to 12 that a smartphone does not work well within an academic environment. In fact, it is detrimental to an academic environment. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Shepherd, would you care to speak?
Yes, hi. My name is Lisa Shepherd. I live on Craigie Street in Portland. I am a parent in Portland Public Schools, and I am echoing Mr. Hosmer and Mr. Burke in favor of phone-free schools for the good of my daughter and her friends, not only in elementary school and middle school, but also in high school all the way through. I know parents have a big voice in this cause, and I'm happy to say that during conversations with parents around me, they are on board with advocating for a stronger policy to remove phones from schools. We've heard from teachers. We know per these last two comments, teachers are clearly taking the burden. And I want to say that I know that parents also support this. We have a lot of support on from what I know on the parent side as well. We have the research, we know the impact, and we need to bring socializing face to face back into the hallways and into the lunchrooms as well as in the classrooms. So thank you for considering this. It's very important.
Thank you. Mr. Hart or Ms. Hart? Mr. Hart.
It's Mr. Yep. Hi. Thanks for taking comments. My name's Chris Hart. I live on Rosemont Ave in Portland, and I'm a Deering parent. I'm old enough to remember that my high school had like a designated smoking area. It was like a grassy strip where students could get like their nicotine fix under the watchful eye of a teacher who was probably also smoking. And it sounds pretty wild here in 2025 that a school would facilitate a habit known to lower its students' life expectancies. And I'm pretty sure that in the future, we're going to look back and wonder why we thought it was okay to let students be on their devices, during every spare moment of the school day. I think over the past couple of years, like it's pretty obvious the data is in. Device addiction is as harmful to teen mental health and focus as smoking is to their bodies. I feel like we have a chance to do the hard but right thing here by going with the phone-free Portland schools proposal, and hopefully we won't regret not doing anything later. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would care to speak? Please raise your Zoom hand. Ms. Sage.
Hi, my name is Lily Sage. I live at 44 Exeter Street in Oakdale, Portland, Maine. I'm also a teacher in Portland Public Schools, and I just want to echo what is being said in support of a phone-free policy across all schools from elementary to high school. I teach high schoolers, and my 11th graders have the SAT tomorrow. So in class today, we talked about what are they doing to take care of themselves. And a couple of students said that they were working on looking at their phone less. And they said that when they weren't on their phones, they noticed, they felt it, that they were calmer, they felt more like themselves. So the kids are aware of the impact. They're trying to take steps, right, to reduce their phone use. But it's crazy to me that we are considering not doing everything in our power to help them curb that phone addiction. They need help, and I think it's our job to support that. But as an individual teacher, I can't fight every fight. But across the board, I see students getting their quick dopamine hits, right, in between classes, going to the bathroom, at lunchtime, during academic support blocks. And I think if we could facilitate the development of their social skills and do everything in our power to support greater learning, better outcomes, I would love to see Portland Public Schools take those steps. Thank you.
Thank you, Lily. Good to see you. Is there anyone else who would care to speak? If you raise your Zoom hand, we can recognize you. If not, I will close public comment. There will be time in the future to comment on all, and I also appreciate the emails that were very eloquent, and as well as these individuals on the subject matter. So thank you for your comments. So at this point, I would like to hand the program over to Dr. Warren, who has prepared a few slides to take discussion. We have a busy schedule. We have 3 items that we need to vote on or can vote on send it on to the school board, and I will let her start.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Opperman. If you give me just a second, I'm going to test my tech skills here and see if I can project my deck. Great. So good evening, everyone. I'm Sarah Warren. I'm the Senior Executive Director of Strategy for the district. And I'm just going to walk us through the policies and the school calendar that we'll be looking at tonight. We're going to start out with the calendar, actually. That's a fairly meaty topic, and I want to make sure we have time to walk through that. We will touch on our equity policy, and then we will go on to policy JFCK, which is the one related to cell phones and other electronic devices. So starting out with the calendar, and I will pause the deck in a few minutes and project the actual draft calendar, but I wanted to make sure that folks just get a quick summary of what's being done here. So our school year policy ICA, requires that the board review and approve a proposed calendar from the superintendent each April. And that calendar that gets approved has to be aligned to state law, which requires us to have 175 instructional days or student days and at least 180 maintenance of school days, meaning days when the schools are functioning. In other words, we can have our students in for 175, but then our teachers need to be there for 5 more. So you're going to see down below that we've got a proposed calendar and then a potential alternative calendar for the committee to review. Both of those calendars meet that standard of 175 and 80. And just a point of clarification around the process. So the committee reviews the calendar this evening, determines what they would like to send on to the full board, and then the full board will have its first read of the calendar on April 1st and the second read with a vote on April 8th. So the sort of key feature and headline related to the calendar that we're proposing for the coming year is that it adds Yom Kippur and Eid al-Fitr as holidays. And the point of this is to recognize the rich diversity of our community and to have our calendar reflect that there is significant religious diversity within our school system and our larger community. We actually initiated this based on a push and encouragement from students. Last year, we began these conversations with students, but it's not unique to Portland to think about doing this. So there are lots of other districts, including in Maine, so Lewiston being one, but lots of districts around the country that recognize a diversity of holidays beyond those that tend to be kind of common in the Christian religious calendar. So the 2 days that we're proposing to add are the first day of Yom Kippur, which is the Day of Atonement in Judaism, and the first day of Eid al-Fitr, which marks the end of the month of Holy Ramadan and in the Muslim faith. There is a budgetary implication to adding these 2 days because we would be essentially introducing new holidays that aren't currently in the calendar. It doesn't have any real financial implication for the folks that are already working year-round, but it does affect our budget in terms of people who are school year employees because we would be adding hours that we're paying for on those 2 days. So the total cost of that would be about $65,000 per day. In addition to those 2 holidays, there is also, we sort of went through this very carefully in a lot of detail, trying to make the calendar as sort of smooth and logical as possible. And one of the things a number of people asked us to do was to try to make the winter break the full 10 days, 10 school days, or a solid 2 weeks from start to finish. So rather than having a couple days and then taking the rest of that week off and then having a few more days and coming back with a couple days to go in a week, folks just said, can we please have a full solid 2 weeks? So that is in here. This calendar would have us starting school on September 2nd, so the day after Labor Day, and then with our little ones, pre-K and K, starting the following day on September 3rd. One of the things that this proposed calendar does is get us back to having 4 days of teacher professional development before the start of the school year, at that last week of August. This year we had 3 days plus a day mid-year, and we got a fair amount of feedback that just wasn't sufficient. If we have 4 days, we've got enough time for 2 days of school-based PD, a day of district-based PD, and a day that's just for teachers themselves. The EdTech contract is a little bit different. They have one less day of PD, so they would probably have 3 days at this point in August, and then they would start a day later than the teachers, but they would also have that mid-year day, which I'll talk about in a second. So the other thing that's important to understand about the way we structured this, and it'll maybe be a little clearer when I show you the actual calendar, is that we have paired the Eid al-Fitr holiday with a mid-year professional development day. So the nature of that holiday is such that it is projected to be on March 20th in 2026. But we won't know until the time comes and the religious leaders, the imams, determine, based on the moon, when the actual holiday begins. So we have tried to leave ourselves with some flexibility there. If the religious holiday doesn't fall on the 19th, we would go ahead and have our professional development on that day, and then the holiday would be recognized on the 20th. If it did actually, the holiday ended up falling on the 19th, then we would recognize the holiday on that day and we would make the professional development day on the 20th. And a big part of why we did this was just to try to create a little bit more of a predictable situation for our families in particular. And then in this scenario, the last student day would be on a Monday, June 15th. We would have 3 storm makeup days, the 16th, 17th, and 18th. The 19th of June is Juneteenth, so that would be a holiday for everyone. That means that the teacher's last day is always the day after students are done. So depending on how many storm days we have, their last day could be on that Tuesday the 16th, the 17th or 18th, or as late as Monday the 22nd, which is after the Juneteenth holiday weekend. That is kind of worst case scenario if we had 3 storm days that we had to make up. So, recognizing that there is the budget implication that I spoke about a couple minutes ago, we felt like we should offer up an alternative calendar as well for the committee to consider. Whether or not the committee and the full board decide to move forward with our proposed revision, there will need to be a calendar. And so if it's felt that either we're not ready for that this year and we want to hold until next year, or if there just isn't general support around this calendar, the alternative calendar takes out those 2 proposed new holiday observances for Yom Kippur and Eid. It would change the mid-year PD day, which again we had paired with the Eid holiday. We would instead make that PD day a week earlier on March 13th. And then the last day of school would be affected if we took those 2 holidays out of the plan. And then the last student day would be on Friday, June 12th, with 3 makeup days early the following week. And that would have the teachers out by no later than June 18th. So as we get into the discussion, and again, we won't do that quite yet because I want to show you the actual calendar and how it looks. But we need the committee to make a determination about this proposal to add these holidays and that version of the calendar, whether that is something the committee feels comfortable moving forward to the board for consideration and vote this year. It may be that the committee doesn't feel we're ready for that and could put it off, and we could reintroduce the concept next year, or maybe it's not something that the committee is behind. And if it is either a revisit or a we're not ready for this at all decision, then we need the committee to determine if the alternative calendar is approved. And in either case, of course, the committee has the ability to, request some changes. But I do want to emphasize that time is of the essence here because we do need to get this before the full board. So let me pull down my slides for a second, and I'm going to instead share the actual calendar. Okay, so the first version of the calendar is, again, starting at the end of August. So that's common between both versions of the calendar. School starting right after Labor Day. And then the littlest students starting just after that, the next day. This is the calendar that has a day dedicated to the first day of Yom Kippur. The Indigenous Peoples Day is standard. One thing that is different about this calendar is that in order to make room for the days that we were trying to fit in, the Friday before Indigenous Peoples Day has, at least in the last couple of years, been a day off. So that was a 4-day weekend. But because we have the Yom Kippur holiday about a week and a half before that, that Friday day would go away. So it's just recognition of that, of the 13th. Veterans Day is a standard and a required holiday. We retained the day off on November 26th before the Thanksgiving break or the Thanksgiving holiday. We have the full 10 days or 2 weeks off proposed for the December break, coming back after the New Year. And then Christmas Day, obviously, is closed for the district itself. Students would be out anyway, but for folks that are in the office, that would be a day off. Martin Luther King Jr. Day is a regular holiday. February break, very similar to this year, would be a week off. This is what I was talking about earlier, where we would have some flexibility around whether the 19th or the 20th. One would be a professional development day and the other would be recognition of Eid. The April break is a solid week off. This is again where there has been, and again, I haven't been with the district that long, so I don't know how far this goes back, but at least some years there has been a day off on that Friday before the April break. That would not be the case in this calendar. Memorial Day, obviously, is a regular holiday. And then here, the last student day would be on Monday, June 15th, with the tentative storm days. And then the teacher final day depends on that. In any event, on Juneteenth, everything would be closed. And then we are looking to close the district office for a week in late June, early July. To give folks in the district a break because it's kind of hard to get a real break when not everyone is on a break. So there would still have to be a few people that were working during that time, just because there's some activities in the summer that we probably couldn't avoid, but those folks would get their time off at another time. Let me just pause here because I'd like to just see if there are any questions before I move on to the other version of the calendar. And I can't see folks, so I'm going to rely on you, Dr. Opperman, to let me know.
Well, yes, I believe we have one. Chair Letts would like to speak. Go ahead.
Thank you, Board Member Upperman. I'm curious, when I'm thinking about this calendar, I'm thinking about this year or this next year, but then what happens after that? So, if Yom Kippur or Eid would fall, and I don't know about Eid, so please correct me if I'm wrong on that, but if it were to fall on a weekend, would we observe on a Monday or a Friday if it falls on a weekend moving forward? And I would assume that we probably won't have the full 2 weeks every year at the end of winter break. So I'm just kind of curious what that would look like moving forward past this year.
Yeah, those are both great questions. Thank you, Chair Lentz. And I don't, in all honesty, have a definitive answer for you. I think that would be up to the board. I will say that we looked at potentially changing the policy with regard to the school year, so ICA, and research looking at other districts didn't really turn up a whole lot in terms of other districts having a policy that would speak to diversity within the calendar. So we decided for the time being to just focus on trying to figure out the calendar itself. But I think what that means is we figured it out within the context of the coming years, sort of what the calendar looks like in the coming year. But that doesn't definitively say one way or another whether, to your point, we would be observing Eid on a weekend. Would we attach a day to the weekend for that? I don't know. And then I think you're right about the 2 weeks off. It seemed to be that the way that the holiday and the sort of break period fell during this December created this opportunity to easily string together a solid 10 days off. And there were other districts around us that were doing that too. So it made a certain amount of sense. But whether or not that would be an ongoing thing going forward, I don't know.
Vice Chair Bondo, would you like?
Yeah, I don't know if it's gonna be a question, maybe comments. I think I'm just going to hold a little bit until you finish, so I'll make my comments. And maybe, comment and gonna be a combination, maybe some other the question together. But I just want to say the end. Thank you.
Thank you. I have a question, comment. Were any other days, religious holidays, considered in adjusting for any other religions, adjusting the calendar at this point?
There was discussion. Some people raised a question around Good Friday. The other one that came up in conversation with a couple people was the Lunar New Year. And we, I think just decided to start with these two and see where that takes us. Obviously, Good Friday is extremely significant for many people. It's the most important religious holiday on the Christian calendar. But this calendar already recognizes Christmas. And Easter is a significant day, which obviously falls on a weekend, but people routinely get that off. So this was an effort to try to at least build some diversity into the calendar and recognition of different religions' holidays, but doesn't clearly get all of it. There's another Eid for the Muslim community. There's Rosh Hashanah for the Jewish community. So this doesn't by any means get all of the holidays. It tries to get some of the most significant in. But again, that's up to the board ultimately to decide how many and which ones to recognize.
Thank you. I had Does anyone else? I keep checking who would want to speak. Yes, Chair Lentz. I'm sorry. I'm scrolling to see you.
No, I know how it is. Thank you again, Board Member Opperman. As I have been looking across districts to see what other districts do on this as well, I might suggest to the committee, and I don't think it would have to happen with the rollout of this calendar, but Denver and Minneapolis and I think Seattle, which all have similar kind of demographics as we do in Portland, have an additional supplement to their calendars that talks about observances and holidays across the district. And they go through by month and kind of like name the holidays that people are celebrating within the district or observing. And I do think there's still a disconnect in our district between what is happening in our young people's lives and what we're recognizing. I think we've gotten tons better, but I think if we could like more operationalize kind of naming and just having a resource for the community, you know, when PTO is planning their events, that they could go someplace to look up the dates of holidays and observances. I think that could be a really helpful tool. So I might suggest to the committee to look at doing something similar for us. And I can send you all some links to look at as well.
Thank you very much for raising that, Chair Lentz. We do actually do that in Portland, but to your point, I agree. It doesn't seem like we've gotten to a place where we're doing it as well as we need to. We do have a list, you know, internally that we're working from, trying to avoid like after school activities or major events on those days that are most significant across different faiths. And I didn't specifically address it here only because you know, this is specific to like which days we have school. But I think we could certainly come back to the committee with that list. And we also get help from members of the community. For example, there are Jewish organizations and community members who, you know, kindly send us a list each year of the days that are most significant in that community and that faith. So, you know, I think we could certainly come back to you with a list, and we could make that more public and, you know, work to hold ourselves accountable around the scheduling on those days.
Vice Chair Bondo, would you like to speak?
Yeah, so yeah, I'm just going to go ahead and say, because it was most of my comments, it was related to what Board Opperman just mentioned earlier. So I just want to say the fairness with other faith subgroups. So I wonder just how far we are willing to be to go to the area of diversity in the calendar. One, personally, I see then with all the respect for all the faith religions, but I feel like when I see the costs, and if I see them, if we need to be fair, we need to open up to everybody else. Because are we ready to bring other days or other religions one student or family or community come and request it? If we start with two, we just need to make sure then we can open up to a large conversation. I'm mostly leaning to just be with the standards and recognizing the other faith religious days than to go to prioritize to this time and just leave the other one on the side. So, or we do for everybody, or we just leave the standards who has been there. So this is my comment, because these costs are $65,000 a year. So with everything happening to the district, I'd rather go really spend that one for social worker or somebody else who's making a little more impact to the academic of our students. So I just bring my comment right away on where we're going.
Well, thank you. I mean, this is a committee, so it's a little bit more casual.
All right, perfect. Thank you.
Into a motion. Member Ali.
Hi. Yes. So my question is pertaining to a little bit of how Mickey has stated about the days. I mean, the specific days that we're offering right now for the Jewish and the Muslim community. why is it costing such significant amount for that one particular day to be, or those two particular days to be like absent or closed?
So these would be new holidays added to our calendar that don't exist right now. And per our contracts, our collective bargaining agreements, we would need to pay our ed techs for the holiday. And then we would also need to pay the members of our base union who are school year employees. So these are folks that are hourly and school year. So we were sort of calculating what would it cost to pay those two subgroups of people for the extra day.
Okay, is it 65,000 in total for the 2 days, or is it just 1 day?
No, it's 65,000 per day.
Per day. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, while we all have discussions and are going to continue talking about this, I just also would like to put in that the majority of people that live in the world as well as America, three largest religions are Christianity, Islam, and Judaism. So that gets like a great majority of numbers. The second thing I would like to say is Eid is technically 3 days, and but we try to like make it very important for that 1 day of celebration, because we don't celebrate any other holidays on the list, like at all, other than maybe New Year's, but we don't celebrate anything else. And because of that, it's a significant holiday for all Muslim members, like Muslim individuals, that nobody goes to school, right? So it's I don't know what the percentage of Muslims are in school, but that's a significant number. And I think that, I mean, including, I think that Jewish, the people from the Jewish religion would be a significant number as well. But specifically for Muslims, I know that they don't attend school, right? Maybe some teachers may not attend school that celebrate that specific holiday. And it's so I just wanted to put that out there in consideration of the total amount of that's gonna cost us.
Thank you. If there's no other comment, I wanted to bring up a couple of thoughts, and the reason this is, I'm sure, came up, it was brought up because of the students. There's on holidays, high holidays, students might miss school or might have something in the evening, and the activities of school, even though they may not even be at school, impact them. I mean, and this is so that if, my teacher said I still had to have XYZ done, even though I was in, the mosque all day or in temple or church. And also it's a difficulty I know for members of, I know in the past, members of the Jewish community who work and would, take a professional day or a personal day in order to celebrate. So imagine that is what would happen with people who are of the Muslim faith. That said, and those interferences of school in religion are important. And the question is it critical that all students be involved? Is it, and I know for contract-wise, as for an employee, if they were to say, this is my faith, this is my day, where we rewrite our contracts so that would be a day that might be added on somewhere else. I bring all these things up just as a conversation. The whole thing and all of it is that 175 days is not a lot of time. As a teacher who knows that, oh my gosh, I've got to this point of the year and I don't have enough days to teach. So and that is always the give and take on this. So I just wanted to bring those points up as well. And the cost of increasing, I think, Vice Chair mentioned that if we did take a half day for Good Friday, because that at one time was a holiday in most school districts in the United States, at least when I was a kid. Even for some people, the day after Easter, because Easter was on a Sunday and was a regular non-working day for various traditional reasons. I'm babbling, but I'm just trying to bring thoughts to people's mind, because what should we send to the board?
So, Chair Opperman, can I go ahead and show you the alternative calendar so that
That
folks
would be very nice, please.
Okay. So, it looks mostly the same. Same start to the school year for both teachers and ed techs and students. By the way, I didn't mention base staff here because that contract language is a little bit more complicated. So it was too much to kind of get into here, but we sort of figure that out based on the start of the school year for those folks within the base contract. So can be for discussion another time. I don't think it's particularly relevant to the decision that needs to be made here now. So the primary difference here would be that we wouldn't have those two holidays that we had put in, those go away. We would then have our PD day in March. Instead of on the 19th, we're proposing to move it back to the 13th. Because if there are people on staff, in particular, that are celebrating the Eid holiday the following week, we would not want them to, if they were taking a personal day to celebrate the holiday, we wouldn't want them to miss the PD day. So we're trying to place the PD day in March just because March is a really long month and it can be really tough for folks to get through. And so it's kind of nice to have something, even though it's not technically a day off, it's a little bit of a change of pace for our teachers and other school-based team members. So that's the primary mid-year change. And then the other impact is really at the end of the school year. It gets students out just a day earlier than in the other version of the calendar. So in the event of no snow days, June 12th, which is a Friday, and then with 3 storm days the following week. So those are the main differences between those two schedules.
And there is the possibility of modifying these, as we have a motion to accept one or the other, to then amend it in a way that people might feel was appropriate.
Right.
So just remember that option is there. Any other thoughts at this point? Yes, Chair. Vice Chair.
Yeah. So, Dr. Ryan, what's the cost of having a half day instead of having a full day of the two days of religious? It's gonna be just half of the price, half of the cost, or different?
That's a good question. Yes, I think it would be half, because what we're trying to do is we'd be paying, these are hourly folks, so I think it would end up being half.
Okay. Can we, I would like to have an amendment for that, instead to consider a full day of vacation.
Should we have a motion to accept the first proposed calendar? Is that what you like, Nikki, first? And then we can amend it. I'm trying to do what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah, and sorry, I know this is complicated because we put 2 in front of you. So I think that's a good question, is if you're going to offer an amendment, which one are you working to amend?
Yes.
Is it the should I go back to the first one?
Is that the one, Mickey?
Yes, for the first one, because
Okay, so then I will like to entertain a motion to accept the 2025-26 school calendar number 1 as presented by Dr. Warren. And when someone move that, please, and second, and then we can do the,
yeah, I move.
okay? Ali, I'll second. That kind of thing, since we're short. So at this point, Mickey, what would you like to propose
Board Member Upperman, can
Yes.
you vote on that first before you amend it?
No. You amend it and then vote it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah. So which way we go?
Well, anyway, what would you like to?
Okay. Yeah. I would like to make an amendment to have a half day of the two proposed days on the two, I think is Yom Kippur and the Eid, instead to have a full day.
So this is your motion to amend that,
Yes.
and we need Ali? You there?
Yes,
Can I-
I'm here. What am I supposed to do? Vote yes, no?
No, well, I'm asking, we need a second on.
I'm not gonna second the half day. It's
Okay. Okay, so,
Can I ask a clarifying question about the amendment?
sure.
Vice Chair Bondo, can you just specify whether it would be the morning or the afternoon? Because I think that
The
matters.
afternoon. The afternoon.
Afternoon.
So it would be the afternoon in preparation for the days. Again, that would be part of the question.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that I know that would, if one were to suggest something such as Good Friday, that would be a half.
Yeah, because I just want to have a fairness, because let's go just see what amendment, because if I don't have any second, I mean, it's not
Well, it dies.
anyway. Yeah.
Okay. All right, so that amendment is gone. I would entertain an amendment at which, in addition to the 2 days, that on Good Friday, the school would be released at noon, and the school would be closed as of noon on Good Friday. Would be my amendment to the motion to accept calendar 1.
Again, sorry, it's not I just want to make sure I'm clear. So Chair Opperman,
Add an extra day, an extra holiday that we are observing is what I'm suggesting. And
but
good.
I just want to clarify, because if we were to let schools out early, but if we serve lunch and our students basically have their morning and lunch, and then we would need to stagger our departures because we have 3 tiers of schools and we can't transport, all the students at once. So the only way for us to do a partial day is to stick with our staggered times, but just do it earlier. But we could still get credit for the instructional day if we had students there in the morning, we fed them lunch, and then we sent them home.
Much like you do on move a Wednesday to a Friday is what you're
Right.
saying.
Right. Yeah. So I just want to make sure that we're clear on what we're proposing here, because if we don't do that,
we wouldn't have to have a holiday.
right, we wouldn't have to actually lose an instructional day.
So the question is then on that is if, and I haven't had a second on that anyway, but that motion, so that motion may die also. Okay.
Yeah. So what I would say is that it's either going to be or it's not going to be. I don't really see a reason for a half day. I think that it would be a little bit more complicated. And the reason why I'm saying that also is, yeah, it's going to be extremely complicated for the whole school. That's what I would think. Noticing like if there is a missing day for individuals that, because it's not holiday, right? Like the amount of and percentages of individuals that are Muslim or Jewish have to like remake all the work, do it, have the teachers work extra because of that specific day, which I understand both ways. I'm just trying to look at the positives and negatives of both sides. If you guys also notice, the field is completely filled. The football field's completely filled. Sometimes it doesn't even fit, right? So I don't know, there's thousands. Like when it comes to the prayers and everything, because I'm even surprised, especially staggering numbers. Yeah, and the last thing is, even though if you look at our school board, if you look at every branch of government, we have Muslims in the school board, the city council, the legislature, and it's increasing, right? And the numbers of us, and I can speak only on behalf of this, and having to miss the schools on those specific days, and then having to remake it, was just really, it was a lot, but it's cool. If we still have to miss it, and if we go with option 2, so be it. Yeah, I had one more point, but I do understand both perspectives, is what I wanted to say.
So are you suggesting that we take a vote on this motion and vote it down if we think that's the other option we can do here? It gets complicated, but it isn't that complicated. Mickey, what would you like to say?
Yeah, I just need to get my mind here on the motion that you just put on the floor. The one you just adding is the Good Friday. So we adding another one.
Yeah, we'd be adding well, the question was adding because Good Friday traditionally is a half observant half day.
That's
and then what Dr. Warren was saying, if you wanted to do a half day, you wouldn't even have to create a holiday on that day.
Yeah,
and also
exactly. So this is why I come out with my fairness on those different faith issues, because we're gonna have somebody who's, another group who's bringing another religious holidays, then we need to do something. And I just see the costs. So I have a question here. If we have to get the cost, so where are we getting the cost? From our general budget, or we can get from the reserve, or we can have the foundation helping to support it? I just want to see where we getting, where our costs will be trade off. Where is coming from? Yes.
So Dr. Scallon, and he can't be here right now because he's at the board budget meeting, but he had proposed that we would staff would work together to find money from within the operating budget. So not requesting a change to the budget that is currently on the table with the board, but that we would stick with that budget, and then we would be responsible for figuring out where to pull it from operating expenses.
Okay. Oh, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I have another question.
Sure.
Yeah. So if can I request if there's a possibility, because I already tried to search this up, the percentages of the 3 top religions of our Portland public schools population, but there is no data on that. The students of color, there's data on that. So I just wanted to see if there's a possibility of looking into the percentages and why it would be very it's not admissible for when the percentages are lower than the 3 major religions. Does that make sense? So if there are, I'm not saying it's not acceptable, it's 100% we should consider it, but when it's the percentages are such a small number, as Muslims have had it such a small number and over 20 something years of us being here in high population, it's now a more definite request, because it's okay, we're all dealing with this now. So yes, that's my request, to see if we can get percentages.
Yeah, it would be great. We were hoping for that too, but we don't ask for that information. So we do know, well, we have some sense of, race and ethnicity, because that is a question, but we don't have that for either staff or students, unfortunately. So
Do you have it? Do you have it disaggregated by country?
no, I mean, we have languages for students, but yeah.
That could be, and the other piece is if you were even to ask the question, which I don't know that we legally could, is the question of observant Christian, observant Muslim, or observant Jew. I mean, there are people who are Jewish who are, as one of my friends who's Jewish, culturally Jewish. So, I mean, the holiday is not necessarily one that they even observe, but they are Jewish. So, I mean, that's a difficulty. I would like to call the question, I think, and so we can vote on this particular there are no amendments at this point. There's no second to either of the amendments. At this point, the only motion we have on the table is that we accept the calendar number 1. So I'm going to call question and see if we have a vote on that, up or down. And we could, if it's voted down, we could consider calendar 2. Should we have a?
Can I just do a last
Go ahead. I mean, this is committee. This is comfortable.
Yeah, no worries. I didn't want to take too much time. But the thing about the Islamic holiday Eid, first off, Muslims are like very, very dedicated when it comes to the specific holiday. Yes, we could state that some Muslims don't pray 5 times a day, but a majority of them do, right? A good amount of them really do the fasting for 30 days, and after fast for 30 days, going to school all 30 days, the one day that they they extremely need, right? They need that one day for their families to be together because of all the struggles, whether it's exams, we had to go through exams. I remember years of college students, and it's just like, yeah, I'm fasting, but I got to do it. I'm tired, but and to have that one day is a very, very significant thing for on behalf of the Muslims. But so that's the only thing I just wanted to say. Yeah. So,
okay, so let us. I mean, if we call question and we can vote up or down on this particular. Mickey, do you have any thoughts?
No, I just appreciate for those those last clarification from Ali, and I will go in favor of voting on the option 1. Yes.
Okay, so is this a roll call situation? I believe, or should we? It's just all those in favor. Mickey, yes.
Yes.
Ali.
Yes.
Okay, and I will say yes as well. And so it will go to the board. At that point, it's the entire discussion, and a larger public conversation as well. So, and perhaps by then we could have a better sense of some of the data that Mickey wanted as well. Okay. Is that any thoughts from any of my people?
Oh, this is good. Thank you. I would love to have the discussion with the whole board. So thank you.
The whole board. Yeah, I think that's kind of and public comment with the whole. I mean, we could do public comment here, but I think, frankly, it would be more beneficial at the other, because of the costs. Okay, so Dr. Warren, shall we move on to our next piece of business?
Yes. Okay. Can you see the slides again now?
Not yet.
Let's see. Okay. Let's see. Now do you see the slides? Policy ACA? Okay. So as Superintendent Scallon sort of foreshadowed during his board comments last week, we have proposed, I think, a relatively limited number of revisions to policy ACA, which is our equity policy. And really the primary purpose of those revisions is, in addition to sort of cleaning up some of the language and trying to make things a little tighter and clearer for the reader and the folks that need to implement this. Also making sure that we're really grounding the policy in our strategic plan. And so there's some updated language there. And then aligning the policy to recent judicial rulings to make sure that we, are essentially protected as we're going forward, so that we can keep protecting the equity work and keep it moving. So that's just a quick summary. And what I'm going to do now is project the actual, if I can pull it off, project the red lines. Let's see. Are you seeing the policy itself now or the slides? Policy? Okay.
Seeing the policy, yes.
Great. Sorry. I'm used to working in Google Meets, not Teams, or not in Zoom. All right. So here are the red lines. Again, as mentioned before, there's some added language in here proposed to ground in our strategic plan. You'll see some red lines, just kind of cleanup type edits. Gifted and talented changed to Chapter 104, which is the state law that governs that body of work around our students who need some extra support and opportunities around their learning. Again, a lot of just sort of cleanup type edits here. And then when we get down lower, the definition of equity here under A has been clarified a little bit. This is essentially it's a relatively broad definition of equity, so that's not changing. We just have chosen to not call out specific subgroups, and B seemed to be somewhat redundant and not necessary because the definition is above in A. And then in some cases, trying to sort of spell things out a little bit more. So under C here, defining a little bit more, just saying it in words, what we mean by the equity lens. And similarly down below where we had mentioned cultural humility, trying to kind of spell that out a little bit more in terms of really it's about awareness and building knowledge of one another's cultures and being sensitive to that and practicing self-reflection around that. And then the equity literacy definition was quite long and a little bit confusing to some readers. So we just decided to make it more brief and stick to the sort of paragraph there. Took out all the added bullet points. Clarity under, this is staff and capacity building under professional development, that the expectation is that people have professional development multiple times a year related to equity. And making sure that, again, we're grounding in the importance of this work in the context of academic outcomes and student outcomes. Wanting to make sure that our PD is modeling best practices for folks. And then when we got to staff evaluation, took out a line here, again, to align to what we understand to be, in line with current legal rulings. Hiring and recruitment, similarly, wanting to make sure that we reinforce that Portland Public Schools practices non-discrimination in line with state and federal law, and have to be careful that the language we use to talk about that in our hiring process makes clear that we are not discriminating based on someone's particular identity or background. The toolkit we use is truly a hiring toolkit, and so that's what it has been renamed. And then again, some changes down here to make clear that we are providing support across the board to staff and educators, and we're working on career pipelines and pathways across our team. Not a whole lot of change around curriculum and instruction. And when we are thinking about how we're teaching these things, wanting to make sure, that we're emphasizing that there is a history that students should have access to and the opportunity to learn. But really it is the history of discrimination and discriminatory policies and practices. And one of the things that's important to us as we move forward is that we maintain high expectations for both staff and students. And that's something that we want to keep hitting. It's an important part of our work, not only around equity, but around moving student outcomes academically. There is recognition here. Actually, I think that we might have lost the red lines. But this D, capital letter D, and then A, the sort of entry point for this discussion around land acknowledgements, points out that we are, as a district, upholding the state mandate in education around the instruction on American history, African American studies, Maine studies, Wabanaki studies, and the history of genocide. So just reinforcing and reaffirming that that's what we stick to. And then, let's see. I think the last piece was around under this section, the evaluation. So we called it evaluation as opposed to audit. We thought that might make it a little bit clearer that we're essentially evaluating the progress that we're making with regard to implementing the policy. And I think that kind of captures most of it. I would ask if Chair Lentz wants to add, because she has played a central role in helping move this editing process.
Yeah, I would just add that written in this policy, it asks us to look at this annually. So part of this was opening it up to just look and see what needed to be changed and streamlined. I think a lot of things have changed both in the world and in the district since this policy was written, but I think it still serves as an incredible anchor for the work that we're trying to do here. And so wanted to continue to fortify that and just streamline it a little bit.
Thank you, Chair Lentz. Vice Chair Bondo, you had a thought?
Yes, when I was reading, I just came out to my mind. Dr. Ryan, can you go to the definition on the equity? And I want to just to bring a little discussion, just an idea to see about what I'm thinking after. Because what I see here, the value of the definition equity is being really valuable with the subgroup when we mention all those subgroups. Now we have to remove those subgroup names, and everything seems to me like a really totally vague here without having and just keeping the any population subgroup period without specifying what kind of subgroup is about. So I was thinking like we can just remove the part B, because on the first part we already have individual needs, identities, and experience. Because why we have to leave the subgroup and we don't have to mention them? So in that lens, I was really bringing my thoughts here to think about why we need to have the subgroup stay there and crossing all the identities here: race, gender, sexual orientation, religion, and ethnicities, without naming them.
So my question is, you think that we should be,
Yeah, so I think we should, I don't know, maybe Chair Lance, you have right, because for me, I was thinking we should just promote the part B of the equities achieved in Portland Public School when there are no identifiable differences in outcomes and in experience for any population subgroup. Which kind of subgroup are we talking about? Because this is like giving all the value of that policy in general when we mention that. So when we remove it, so I'm thinking then we better just taking that part away and leaving just the needs, identities, and experience, because when we already mentioned that in that definition, equity is all people. So that means all people actually we means included those subgroups if we look at that lens.
yeah. Right. Chair Lance, did you want to make a comment on that?
Yeah, I'm happy to respond to that. So I see that second sentence that you're talking about potentially removing as the important part of that sentence is, to me, is the no identifiable difference in outcomes, because it suggests that we're going to look at that and measure it and compare between subgroups. And I think that while we want to provide what everybody needs and hold high expectations, that itself, without the measuring and comparing, I don't think moves us towards equity. So I feel like those both both of those sentences felt important to me in looking at this. I think that I went back and forth on that list of identities. I think sometimes what is hard about when we list identities is that we can't list them all. And so then it feels like we're leaving people out. And so the intention behind that was just to do that, to like remove it all. So it didn't feel like important identities were not being specifically named there.
Yeah, because when I see the equity, just the way I want to see us in the district is mostly the impact on that policy on the ground. And I think if I heard you well, is that the way we're going to measure those outcomes and results is we going under the ground. We're going to define those specific subgroup without naming them. I just want to make sure. The way we just crossing them out here, but we know exactly what kind of subgroup we have in our system, the way to measure that. So
I would speak to that just because I think we're not getting all the subgroups, because one I see missing is special needs, gifted and talented, and that group. And so by those are subgroups as well. And I understand what you're saying about that first sentence really says it all, but I understand the measurement piece. It might be worded differently. I don't know.
Because the way I understood Chair Lance is that when we measure the subgroup without knowing, because if we don't name that here and we have to remove that, I really agree with that. And then I see then the value of the equity policy is not making any more sense to me, because why are we going to measure? Because we know that we have a broader list of the subgroups, but here we have some specific ones that we really target, because that's why we've been seeing the wide gap in our district. So that's why I come. But I really come on. Yeah, I got your thoughts, but I feel like, the powerful meanings, it was just those names, but now I totally agree. So why we have to keep those subgroups if we missing some of the people here in a large, broader sense, then we have to measure. And when we know name, the thing that I have with our policies is our implementation on the ground. When it's not named on the policy here, it just totally forget and go to the drawers. So that's exactly what I see here. Now we have to remove that. So that means those subgroups never be mentioned that. But if we know, then we have that larger, broader list under the needs, then we're still working and doing the equity work. That makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Doug Strelly.
Thank you. I agree with Mickey. So with the changes of the language, I understand why we're doing it. But the point is, I think increasing the subgroups in other subgroups, populations like special needs, could be a possibility. But just having that in the beginning, so it can speak on behalf of the whole document, I think it's an important piece. Because if you say subgroups, like, and I took policy, like, so when you say subgroups and you bring that to a judge to identify exactly what it means, they can say yes or no when it comes to race, right? For example. So I feel like maybe increasing it, but removing it from the piece of equity. I mean, what's equitable? The height, right? Oh, like, what are we doing by subgroups, right? So I think by identifying the specific subgroups on behalf of that may be important, and at the same time, it may not go against the ruling that we're the reason why we're changing it.
Lance?
I just hear very clearly what you're saying, and so I'm wondering if perhaps we could get suggestions from our data team about the ways that we the common factors that we're disaggregating data by, and to add a sentence here that says something along the lines of we use disaggregated data to evaluate the progress on equity. We commonly disaggregate by these factors, or something along those lines. That I think there is like a common group of factors that we're disaggregating data by, and I think that could be a place here that it would get to kind of like both of the things that we're trying to do.
Yeah, I agree. I'm leaning to that way. Yeah. That will give more sense and more value to the equity, because we are losing most of the sense why we write out those policy a couple years ago. So I think when we have that specific line, we still lean to measure those specificities around those subgroups without naming them. Yes.
And then another thing I would just like to say is that this is not based on decision making, right? So I don't know how it would interfere with the ruling, right? So this isn't decision making. This is just definitions based on what equity is and what it means to Portland Public Schools.
Yeah, I think I could work with Dr. Warren and the data team to come up with an amendment for when this gets to the board level that we could add there.
That sounds like an excellent idea. So, will we move this to the board as presented? May I have a motion for accepting policy ACA as amended?
Are we going to make those amendments, right? I think.
Well, I think what Chair Lance is saying is this is going to go to the board.
Okay.
And at the board, it can be amended again.
Oh, okay.
So at this point, what we're just doing is accepting this as written, because unless there are other things that we really need to rework, but and move it, say we would accept it to have it moved to the board.
Okay.
Vote to move it to the board. It might be the appropriate way of wording it as opposed to being accepting it. So motion to move the policy ACA, equity policy, to the full board for first read. Do I have a motion? And I got a motion. I got a second.
A second. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And all in favor?
Yes.
Rivas? Yes, yes, yes. Yes. Thank you. Okay. I think that's that for that one. Is that Dr. Warren?
Amazing. Okay.
All right.
Thank you. Let us move on. Can you see the next policy now?
Yes, indeed.
All righty. So I'm not going to, just for the sake of time, because we're at 6:30, I won't go back and forth with the slides. But just to kind of quickly walk through what's in the proposed changes here in the cell phone policy. A little bit of a beefing up in the beginning around the nature of how cell phones cannot be used by students in the schools, and clarification around the subject to search. Some of this actually, subject to search piece got moved from further down in the policy, but this is just sort of strengthening the preamble really to the detailed portion to make sure it's clear that these pieces are relevant to all grade levels. There's something missing here. So this header should have gone away, actually, but not a huge deal. So one of the key pieces of this is to clarify that the superintendent or designee will create guidelines. So one thing I think that's important for folks to know is that the policy generally would be, overarching and providing the general frame for what the board wants to see happen in the schools. And the detail typically would come in the associated rules. So once the board approves an updated version of this policy, then staff would be responsible for coming in behind that and producing an updated version of JFCKR, which is the rule that goes with the policy. And in general, things around like details of implementation would normally be kind of overseen by the superintendent with staff. So that is one of the things that we would need to do as a team, is to come up with the more detailed guidelines for schools around how to implement this. So the heart of the change proposed here is that at the elementary and middle school level, all devices would be turned off all day and may not be present during the school hours. And the authorization to make an exception to that could only be made by a building administrator. So I think part of the intent here was to take that off the plates of teachers to have to make that kind of decision, and that the administrators would make those decisions within the context of guidance provided by the superintendent. The current sort of off and away thing that's going on in our middle schools, which Dr. Achman could speak to more if people have questions about it. But the difference between what's currently being practiced and what's being proposed here is that it's more, right? So rather than just saying, you could keep the phone in your pocket, for example, in this case, it's really intended to not be physically with the student. And it's just really not something that we want students thinking about during the day. The current proposal leaves the high school policy essentially as it is, that students could use their devices between class periods or during lunch periods, but not, it's not supposed to be used during class time. The thinking behind this is that we would try strengthening this sort of language, particularly at the middle school level. I think what we're hearing is that this isn't coming up as a huge concern in the elementary schools, but it is a significant challenge at the middle school level. And so if we could put this in place and start working with this strengthened version of the policy and an associated set of guidance, we would learn from that implementation, and then we could bring that learning back if the committee or the board would like to revisit the idea of high school and consider how it's working out in the middle school. So that was the thinking behind that. Not that we would necessarily not consider a change at the high school level, but just that we wouldn't be doing it right now in the context of the current changes proposed. The one thing I want to note is that I think Some people might have concerns about, so what if there's a student that has a health issue that gets monitored through their phone? Those are the types of things that, would be built into the guidance that school leaders would be able to make an exception for. So we're not trying to do anything that would put someone in harm's way, of course, but just trying to put some pretty clear restrictions and limitations around the use of devices. And it's not just cell phones; it's also things like smartwatches, right, which have the same kind of effect. So that is really the heart of what is proposed there. And let me turn it back over to you, Chair Opperman, and.
Thank you. I will make a couple more comments on the drafting of this. Began with a more explanation of what would be happening at the middle school, as Dr. Warren mentioned. The idea of these being locked away, discussion about how that would be done. Was brought about, looking at the different magnetic boxes and general lock boxes and all. But the idea is that the R, which will come to us, will say that students will not be in possession of their phone. It will be off and not in their possession at the middle school. The discussion always will be, what if a parent needs to get a hold of their child? As for decades, that can go through the office. And if there's, the discussion of translations and all, if something comes into the office, then the administrator then has the responsibility to deal with it. The idea is that teachers do not have to do anything other than collect them at the beginning of the day and give them back at the end of the day. And the structure of middle schools supports that method. So that is what we're seeing. I also want to make a comment about why the high school is not as strict. It's the day is structured differently. The needs of young adults, as opposed to middle school teens, are different. And the discussion needs to be well thought out. The idea is that they are not to be interfering with education, that they are not being distracting. I think that, and as I've talked to several people by email or in person, that we need to really evaluate how that can be done respectfully at the high school level. I think Dr. Ahmed has a committee that he is forming, and that would be an important piece of putting these things together. So with that background onto what went behind all of this and why it's not as all-encompassing as some would like, certainly not students, but adults who understand the issue with technology. This is what we came with. So, Mickey, could you have a comment, a question?
I have a comment here. Yeah, I already read these, and something I've been advocate for years, even though when my kids were at public school a couple of years ago. I've been always against the cell phone using the class, regardless on the level, middle school or high school, especially high school, because when I look at the academic achievement, where we are going now with our students, and be one of the translator on the parent-teacher conference for immigrants going there. It's been really a tough question most of the time with the cell phone use. The way they use it is just a little more abusing, because it has been just that distraction for years to those areas of learning. So I'm just wonder, we have elementary school to take away some cell phone here with the middle school. I just don't go too much to the elementary school, but I totally approve of the middle school. But I feel like also in the high school, we need to be a little more strong with our language here, because that's exactly because we don't have a great data on the student participation in our classroom. And why not we just look at the equity policy when we talk about improving the classroom culture and climate. And I think one on that policy, especially for high school, is really powerful. Then is the time for us to make a change. So I feel like if we're giving all our level, all our grades should be the same policy, but with some specifications for the high school, why they have to use it for that specific time, like a research or something that they have to use it. But I think elementary school is not like most of our students in elementary school, they carry a cell phone. But in high school is almost all of them. And I'm really speaking from the community that I come from, because it's really abusing on the use of those cell phones, regardless wherever they are, even losing the family socialization. They just skip away of the learning process. So that means the academic achievement is really decreasing and down, and no one is really working on, no one is speaking out of that. And I think is one of the reasons for me. And I just want to see the three recommendations to be on the same level for all the grades, if possible. Yeah, that's my comments. Thank you.
I appreciate it. One of the situation is just cell phones. It is also elect watches. And that is something that, because watches are, and earbuds and the like are all a piece and part of this now. So that is a piece there that to bring it. I appreciate what you're saying. Anything else, Ali? Do you have?
Yes. So I have I 100% I agree, and I think that I've been advocating for this for a very long time in many different areas. That the number one. I think, right, this is not proven, but number one thing that's going to increase the stress and depression levels of youth is the lack of like personal socialization, because of the lack of ever being around each other without their cell phones and whatnot, and all these gadgets that are increasing. So just like I limit it for my own daughter and myself as well. I think it's 100% necessary to do it in an educational setting. My only not concern, but I would like to just highlight the piece of making the accommodations for when someone does need it, right? For example, the medication things and whatnot. You know, I'm just making sure that those things are really the administrators. I don't know if the administration or administrators would consider certain other things. I think that's just a big question, and hopefully the committee that Abdullah is creating can answer those questions. And then lastly, I don't even know about turning off. I think you shouldn't have it in your classes, right? That's where I'm more leaning to. Because if my phone, I gotta be honest, if I had my phone in high school, and you told me to turn it off, I'm turning it on, and I'm gonna take it off, I'm put it on vibrate. So that's the only thing I would be considering, and teachers are already exhausted. They've contacted me many times about this. They don't want to, we don't want to have them deal with, is your phone on or off now? Like, you're still using it. So that's the only comment.
Thank you. Nikki?
Yeah,
Nikki?
I just want to emphasize what Ali just mentioned exactly. And I've been trying that with my kids when they were little, when they were in high school. Just say to try to test them. And they've been answering me back. I say, why are you answering me back? Because, mommy, you just text me. So that means you in class.
Yeah.
So you in class. And okay. So those are, so I have done a lot to make sure then, they keep using, even though, they have that under the desk. They just find a way to do that. So I think when I see exactly what we're doing with the achievement gap, and I see to improve the climate in our classroom and also supporting our teachers, I think is about time. Yes, that's my plus.
So I hear both of you speaking strongly on this, and I can't argue with any of your points. So the question is on the wording of this particular, how we want to change the wording. And so perhaps Chair Lentz has a thought.
I just had one question and then two thoughts. Is this, are we working against a deadline at all on this policy? I know that we have built in a line item into the budget for potential equipment attached to this, but I think it may be helpful when it gets to the board level to have this presented with the R policy as well. And so I don't know if there's a way, could we give some, or could you give feedback and then bring it back with updates and the R policy? But I just feel like having them both together, by the time it gets to the board, feels important to be able to just understand the whole piece of that. And if I was a parent coming to read this policy, it would not be clear to me from this language that phones are meant to be away from the physical kid. So I think I would also recommended change within bullet point A there that may not be present during school hours. That it doesn't feel definitive enough or direct enough with what we're saying. Like, it must be locked in a way, or may not be on the student's person. I just think we should go a step further around that language.
Yeah, so we'll go back to maybe some of the previous writings.
Last thing for Abdullahi, when you're considering the conversation with the committee, two pieces. Number one, is it better for them to have it in their locker? So would there be a policy to have locks in their locker? You're required to have locks on your locker and leaving in your locker, or would it be that your homeroom teacher would take it during lunch? You have to stop by homeroom, and then at the end of the day, you would go to your homeroom teacher as again to grab it. So that's the only thing I would ask the committee to consider.
Well, that's on the middle schools, exactly how it would happen. Question is, how is the organization of the day at the high school different? And Dr. Ahmed is not on again. So I think we could table this to another time. It certainly is not a problem for me.
I think Dr. Ahmed is actually still here, but I just want to say,
you are.
That level of detail is actually exactly the kind of thing that we would be kind of wrestling with in the rules as opposed to the policy normally. And I'm wondering if, given that we need to come back to you, I think, with a proposed rule to go along with this, would it make sense for us to take the whole thing away and come back with some updated language for this section of the policy as well as the corresponding rule?
Yes, I think that would be appropriate.
Yeah.
Would that be after the subcommittee that Abdullah is going to create, so they can have their questions and points that they're going to point out?
Well, at this point, the conversation I've had with a couple people, and I was talking to member Lena, who has been closely involved with the community prior to her being on the school board. She and I talked today about this, and I think there will a committee to discuss the R's of this would be happening pretty quickly from our plan. So so I would say that we would not see this policy again before April 9th necessarily, unless it's only 2 weeks away because this one meeting has been moved back, but certainly by May. Okay, April 9th was going to be a discussion of middle school, just general middle school issues in the academic world, and perhaps another policy issue that may come back to us. But yes, you're right, Member Ali.
Can I ask a point of clarification, just so I'm sure, because I want to make sure that staff have clear direction. When I understood that we need to strengthen that language in 1A and come back with some alternative language there, but I wasn't clear. Did you also want us to look at strengthening the high school language? Because right now that's primarily focused on elementary and middle.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
I think that's what I'm hearing from Chair Ando and Mr. Ali, that, and from what the teachers and the parents at the high school. The question is, in the strengthening that language and providing the regulations that go with the language to make it clear what is meant, and how it works at the high school. And that is the committee that Dr. Ahmed has, will be dealing with that. I see Chair Lentz and Member Ali. Chair Lentz.
Yeah, just, from this work has been happening for, almost a year now, where middle school building leaders and union leaders and parents were involved in the middle school work there. And it feels like very clear where the consensus is there and that the policy could be changed and implemented, like, very soon and definitely within the next school year. I guess I'm worried, and kind of in my mind, the idea is that we would implement the changes for the middle school, and then the high school work would continue on to get us to consensus, and then we'd open the policy back up and change it again there, because it doesn't, at least from where I'm sitting, it doesn't feel like we have the same level of clarity about what the solution is in terms of implementation at the high school level. And so I guess I just want to make sure that we have this policy through the board before the end of the school year, so that at least middle schools are ready to roll in the fall. And so I guess I don't know if we have enough information to integrate new high school language at this point.
Thank you. Mr. Lee?
Yeah, yes. The only thing I would say for the elementary one is I don't know if I think the committee should consider this too, that elementary schoolers, the parents are probably giving it to them because of safety reasons, right? Middle school and high school, they're a lot more competent and able to when they're in danger and not. So I think that on behalf of elementary school, really just to consider that. And I know we don't have any policies around that, but yeah, I don't think if it could be distracting for them in class, obviously they shouldn't have it in class, but on behalf of safety reasons.
Well, I think that the wording, or I guess you're saying the need for the wording to be a little stronger on A, but that wording does apply both to middle school and elementary school. So, and they would have, if the lock boxes or the equivalent thereof, and an understanding on that as well. So, it seems the difficulty is with the high school, piece. So, Vice Chair Bondo.
Yes, thank you. I just want to go back to what Chair Len just mentioned about. So we know we already have some. I think what we want to just strengthen here is on the A, because we already know the rulings and we know some guidelines to make it happen. So I just wonder what really missing in the high school to make it on the same level than we have with the A. So everything can take effect during fall. Because those are I know it's a different capacity, but the rules should be almost the same, because no cell phone during the school hours. So I don't know, except some of those clarifications who may be different for middle school than high school. So I just wonder about the time frame, why we need to take it that long to have that ruling done in those specific areas. For middle school, we already have that clear mindset where we want to go. And then we feel like the rules should be the same when we talk about the same thing. And then maybe have some clarification or maybe different guidelines under the ruling how the high school need to be operated. So I think those are the different questions coming in my mind when I look about the time frame, because both can be ruling and be active during the fall year for this year in fall, instead to keep on moving forward and keep changing and back and forth with the high school, just that line. If you see what we have done for the A, those ruling and clarity are more volume than the paragraph on the B. So I think the ruling should be the same for both grades.
So we do need to have another amendment, modification, looking at 7 o'clock, and I 2 hours is what I think the limit should be on any of this. But this point, unless you fear differently, but we could bring this back up in April with a modification A and B as needed. I don't think R would be ready, so I would like to hear what Dr. Warren has to say on the topic.
Yeah, thank you. Wanted to respond a little bit to Vice Chair Bondo. I mean, to me, I think that the kind of big pieces to this are, one, just needing that time to go through the public engagement process and the engagement with the principals and the students, which, as Chair Lentz pointed out, we've had more of that opportunity at the middle school level, but haven't as much so far at the high school level. And, it will undoubtedly be something that people have feelings about and probably need an opportunity to express their views and feelings. And that's just not something I don't think that we can pull off over the next few weeks, realistically, given all the other stuff going on, not just at the district level, but at the schools, in high schools right now. So that's one concern I would have, is just being sure we can really, appropriately engage with people. And then, the other piece is just, I think that based on what I'm hearing, Dr. Ahmed could weigh in, but it doesn't sound like we're getting quite the same groundswell of concern coming from school leaders, at least. We're, obviously we had a few teachers at the high school level talk tonight, but maybe not that quite same level of concern being expressed about this being one of the highest priorities for them in the list of things that they're trying to work on and move in the high schools. So that's not in any way to take a stance on any of this or to say which way it should or shouldn't go, but just I do think that getting to the high school part of this is a little bit probably more complicated and time consuming. And if it is the case that the board wants to turn that around that quickly, that would end up needing to become like top priority above a lot of other things, I think, to get it to move it that fast.
I really understand those steps then we want to make, and I respect that. So. And yes, so let's see what we are able to move. But I feel like if we can have a deadline, then, before the end of the year, so we can move for the following year of school, that will make more sense, because we know exactly, but it may not be a priority for the school leaders, but it's really a priority for our students, for the classroom climate and the classroom culture. Then we really want to see improving the participation and academic achievement. So I do respect it.
So let me propose that we move on this particular policy as written, and move and direct that the committee meet, if it has to meet every other week. I will be happy to chair that and make sure there are enough people that want to be involved in it, certainly parents. The piece that I want to make sure happens is that the student involvement is in there, the student voice is in there, and that takes more time than getting the parents may be all in agreement, the faculty may be all in agreement, but I think we're dealing with young adults in the high school, and I think the respect needed, understanding all of the implications, but that movement has to happen in the proper way. So, if it's going to work, there has to be buy-in at a lot of levels, one way or the other, or else we're having more and more conflicts. So may I suggest that we hold this particular policy to the 9th, April 9th, which is in 2 weeks, at which point we will, if there's a need to modify A to make it a little tighter and perhaps change B so that it reads in our intent of what we're going on. Is that agreeable to members of the committee or not?
Just
Yes.
yes. If Dr. Rahan and the team feel like he's good enough to bring him back in April 9.
Well, I think
You think so?
I think so. I mean, the person who works hardest on this at this point is Dr. Warren, to be quite frank. On this, he reviews it over. And Dr. Ahmed and I are due for a conversation on this, which will probably happen this week as we find time. And that would give us some direction of, one, what can be written in this policy, to direct it in the uniform way you wish to have it go. And I think that's the best way to move it at this point.
Okay.
Okay. I
Right.
think, all right. This has been a very good conversation. I'm pleased with the strength of your commitment to getting this right for all students. So, and I am there as well. I do have a sense of the difficulty of getting it together in a plan in a short period of time for high school, just having been through that process. But we do have to do it in a way that the policy comes up with all the people involved in it speaking their mind. So, all right. So I'm going to ask that we table this until it will come up again next time, and that we should adjourn. Any other thoughts before we do that?
Nope. Thank you, guys.
Okay. The question I have is on the 9th. Is there any difficulty with meeting at 5 o'clock? I know the last time we moved to a Wednesday, we had to move it to 6. Is that still a difficulty? I'm looking at you, Chair Bondo. You're looking. Well, at this point,
Yes, I'm gonna be in conflict. I think that's a Wednesday because yes, that's the 9th on Wednesday. So for me, it should be 6 if possible.
okay.
Otherwise, I won't be.
We will adjust it. So we will be, next time we will meet will be on April 9th on Zoom at 6 p.m.
Thank you so much.
And is there a motion to adjourn?
I move.
In a second somewhere, I think, and good, thank you. All in favor?
Thank you.
Thank you for this very productive night.
Yeah. Good night. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.